And I'm going
Sounds
to put the
good.
spotlight on you, my friend.
It's so exciting. I love the spotlight.
I've heard
I want
that.
to. I want. Oh no! Now I have to look at my picture on the screen. I want to welcome everyone to this community call and group session. Our focus is really to come and restore a sense of calm, a sense of groundedness, and to ignite that inner healing power that we all have within us. My name, of course, is Ken Stone. My good friend John Paduchek is on the line as well. He's hidden out of the way, but if you hear him checking in with me, it's because he's here assisting and helping things get going. And John is an expert in video, among many other things, and he's the reason why we're able to join and have this experience on video today. So, John, thank you so much
You're
for
welcome.
bringing this experience to our community and supporting this live engagement. So I'm going to see if I can't share my screen and bring technology into even more in and see what unfolds here so that I can kind of set out an agenda for how we're going to invest our time together today. So let me just see if I can share the screen on my little tablet here, and let's see if it's going to work. Okay. So there we go. Welcome. Here's, okay, it's actually working. This is so exciting. Okay, so forgive my handwriting, but I think it may actually give us an opportunity to engage on another level if I'm writing as well. And for those of you who have known me for a long time, you'll know that the only place that this ever happens is in-person retreats and workshops. So welcome to the virtual experience. And for those of you who have never shared time with me before, my real focus is on not just on teaching spiritual concepts, but in bridging the gap between our intellectual understanding of spiritual ideas or concepts and the actual experience of them. My belief is that ideas and concepts and awareness are very powerful, but once we begin experiencing them within our bodies, that's when things really begin shifting. And we move from kind of an intellectual um, level of knowledge into an embodied knowledge. In other words, we move from thinking about an idea to actually feeling it in our entire bodies. And the difference between the two is the difference between, wow, there's a neat idea, we're all one, or I'm a child of God, or I'm an undistorted expression and extension of the divine, to actually feeling that energy flowing through our bodies and that sense of groundedness and resonance that comes from that. Okay, so there are a couple of things I want to cover today. Number one, I want to talk about consciousness. And let's see if I can actually spell this. Whoops, it didn't like that. It thought I was making an O. There we go. I want to talk about consciousness, and we're going to explore a couple of different stages of consciousness. And ultimately, I think what we're all trying to do is come to an experience of going, that is quite a drawing. We're trying to come to an experience of going home. There we go, in our bodies, so that we're having that experience of deep connection with the divine. So we'll begin with an exploration of consciousness. And the second thing we're going to talk about is actually a question of perspective. And this perspective is, where is the light? And I'm just going to draw a circle with these things around it. The question is the light out here somewhere? Is it beyond us? Is it out here in the world? Or does the light actually exist within our being? And where within our being is the light? And then the third thing we're going to talk about and explore is soul embodiment. And I'm going to explain what I mean by soul embodiment. And then perhaps most importantly for our time together, we're going to do a transmission. And a transmission is a way of, it's the word that I use to describe the way that God or the divine expresses through me. And we're also going to have an opportunity for Q&A. And there are going to be actually two different places where we can do Q&A. One is after these first three segments. And then the final time we'll have for today at least, is after the transmission. And it may be that there are questions that come up after the transmission, and there may be reflections that you'd like to share. So there's our focus for today. And I think what I want to do is just jump right in with the first exploration around consciousness. So, why is consciousness such an important concept? Consciousness is really the lens through which we experience ourselves and the world at large. And if we put this into context for the circumstances that we find ourselves at in the world right now, consciousness has a huge impact on what you perceive is available within you. And when I'm talking about consciousness, I'm talking about something much more dramatic, or let's see, that's not the right word. It's a much more comprehensive concept than just an idea. So let me just sketch a few things to see if I can describe this to you here. So when we're all born, we're born in what I think of as God consciousness. And this is really the foundation. Everyone is born in God consciousness. And at some point, we all move to a different stage of consciousness. And we could think of it as this triangle here. How wonderful for the lines to straighten out on me. And in this triangle, we could think of this as victim consciousness. And in victim consciousness, everything is happening to us, right? And the power lies outside of us. So if we just think of this here for a second, in victim consciousness, I'm either feeling this way or maybe I'm feeling this way. And I'm trying to figure out, where is God? And where is the answer that I'm looking for? So if the divine is up in heaven or up above us somewhere, one image we might have, and let's see if I can actually draw a picture of, I guess it's probably not a happy God, is it? It might be an angry God in victim consciousness. And this version of the divine has hands on hips. And there isn't, it's almost like there are people up here or people that have access to that, but not the people in victim consciousness. There's something that's standing in the way. People in victim consciousness are looking around and they're looking for someone, especially in a time like this, who can save or rescue them. Somebody who says, I can save you. And they tend to look like they're wearing a cape. Let's pretend that's a cape. And maybe they have a line to God, right? And they might have some answers for you. Here's what you need to do to have, for example, a healing experience or a restoration of resonance, is the way I like to think of it. Resonance and dissonance being the most simple way that we can, with language, describe the polarity between things that are good or things that feel good to us, or our bodies in resonance, a healthy body, healthy mind, etc. So this is in victim consciousness. And the thing is, here's an example of somebody who's got the power, and there might be other people that have the power, but the person in victim consciousness is looking around and saying, where's God? Maybe God's mad at me. God's doing something to me. All these things are happening to me. And I guess you can't see that I'm pointing at the screen. I should be scratching things out on the screen. Things are happening to me, but this person doesn't have a lot of control. They have no efficacy. They're not able to actually impact or do things. Doesn't matter what they're thinking with their mind or doing with their hands or how they're engaging by walking in their life. There's basically a disconnect for them, a disconnect between other people, being able to support other people, receiving support, and so on. And from a developmental standpoint, in the stages of consciousness, this is actually a stage everyone goes through. So first, we're in God consciousness, and then we move into victim consciousness. And at some point, there's another transition that takes place, and it's a transition that involves a lot of responsibility. ability. Let's say I spelled that right. And in this stage of, this is all about control or manifesting consciousness. And here, all of a sudden, there's a radical shift. This person over here has no power whatsoever. They're isolated and things are happening to them and they don't have a connection with the divine, but there are other people who have power. But in controlling consciousness, it's all about the power of the mind and our thoughts. Oops, thoughts. And also our ability to visualize. So maybe we visualize a house or a body in perfect health. And interestingly enough, what happens to God in this dynamic? Well, God actually becomes our servant. And if I was a better artist, I would draw a picture of a servant, but I'm not sure how to do that. But think of it this way. We're directing God. God is now even below us, if you want to think of it this way. And the thing is, so in this other stage of consciousness and victim consciousness, the divine is up here away in a different space. Some people have access to the divine, and if we know them and we can do the right thing, we might end up with a change. But in controlling consciousness, now all of a sudden the divine has become accessible, and actually God is your servant. God does as you command with your thoughts, and you might even get involved with holding some powerful feelings in your heart. And those two things together can be very powerful in controlling consciousness. In victim consciousness, we're dealing with the disempowered separate self. But in controlling consciousness, we're dealing with the empowered separate self. So over here, this is a very empowered state. And the answers, let's say from a healing standpoint here, have to do with the thoughts that we hold and the images we have in our mind. Mantras might have, or the things that we say, I guess that would be like this. The things that come out of our mouth, the thoughts that we hold, and of course we want our actions, we want our actions to be congruent as well, the things that we do in our life. There's a challenge though with controlling consciousness. It's limited by the thoughts that we hold in our minds, the images that we hold, and our attempts at control. And so the challenge here is, because we're in a state of separation, because we have to tell God what to do, we're limited by the ideas that we can have and the things that are going on in terms of what we're visualizing. And the real challenge relates to thinking that I am in charge, right? I. And here it is the separate I, the empowered separate self. So in a healing crisis or in a health crisis, the dynamic that's going on here to try to restore experiences of resonance or to get grounded is all about the thoughts that we're holding in our mind. But I want to suggest to you that there's actually a more effective and powerful experience that is available to us. And this is really where I perceive the transition that we're at as a planet right now. This transition in consciousness between all these experiences of both disempowerment and also of empowerment, but still very much in separation. And then the next stage of consciousness is over here, but it looks like it's a black box, like it's obscured. And the reason for this being obscured relates to one thing, and it's surrender. We go from thinking, I'm not in charge, right? God is inaccessible to me. Things are happening to me, to developmentally, we take responsibility and make this move into controlling consciousness. And now I can tell God what to do. But the problem is I have to come up with the answer. And everything that my mind thinks is possible is limited by the mind in separation. Still, if I have to tell God what to do, God is separate from me. And so in this move over into, and I'm going to take away the, oops, that's what I wanted to take away. In this move into this obscured box, we let go of control and we realize now I am God's servant. S-E-R-V-A-N-T. I am God's servant. And what I have here is conduit consciousness. This is a profound shift. It's still in separation, but the difference now is instead of God as my servant, it's inverted. If this is God, God is expressing through me. However, God's going to express through me. And conceptually, what we're looking at here is the source of resonance. We can't have resonance in victim consciousness because it's really just about an experience of safety. We can't have an experience of true deep sustaining consciousness in controlling, resonance in controlling consciousness, because we are in the dynamic of thinking we have to tell God what to do. And especially when we're facing a circumstance like we have in the world right now, how do we know what we want? I mean, we could say, I don't want to get sick, or I want to be healthy, but there's a deeper sustaining experience of who I really am, which is only available here in controlling consciousness. And since we're all in the process of trying to support each other in going home, but not home as in we drop the body and we go to heaven, although perhaps that's part of our focus. Ultimately, what I believe is available is that we have the opportunity to go home in the body. And now have an experience of union consciousness. I don't want to spend too much time on this. I guess I've already spent quite a bit of time talking about consciousness, but I'm going to explain to you why this is so important as it relates to the opening up to a deeper experience of grounded resonance and igniting your healing power. The challenge is healing power is not found here in victim consciousness. The appearance of healing power is discovered here in controlling consciousness, but it's not actually sustaining. The only thing that's available in controlling consciousness is a function of my constant engagement. Somebody in the community emailed me and said, oh, I'm so excited. I would really love to get together and work on prayer. And prayer is a very, very powerful way of engaging with the divine. And they related a story about how there had been a loved one who was having low blood pressure. And when they prayed for them, the blood pressure went up. And they were trying to figure out how to make that next move. Praying for or focusing or holding an intention for a healing dynamic is happening in controlling consciousness. But once we move into a surrendered state, we open up to something radically different happening. And when we eventually move into union consciousness, that is an experience of being one with the divine, all of these earlier stages, these are developmental stages of consciousness, are included, but they're included as an integrated state. Okay, I'm going to stop sharing the screen for just a minute. I want to wave my hands around and make this a little more clear. If I'm thinking that I have the answer, then if I'm not happy with the outcome, I have to keep making an effort. I have to think different things. I have to feel different things. If I think I have no power, if I'm experiencing victim consciousness, then I am wondering who can save me, who can fix me. But ultimately, the true source of what, in reality, there's nothing to fix. I understand that that may sound like a contradiction. The source of the dissonance in our lives is the illusion that we are separate from the divine. And once we pierce that, once we come into that experience of conduit consciousness, where we open up to the divine expressing through us, we begin having a completely different experience of ourselves. And this is where thinking about these ideas has a limit, because this idea may be resonating with you and it may not be resonating with you. And either way, it's important to understand at some level, but I want to move to an experience very quickly here, because if we focus exclusively on trying to understand, we're caught in a dynamic where things need to make sense to the separate mind. But when we move into an experience, that falls away and something beyond what we think is capable can begin to express through us. And that's what I was trying to talk about earlier. I'm actually just going to hold this up in front of me here so you can see it on my iPad. That's what I'm talking about in this experience of conduit consciousness. I open up to something that is beyond me. I open up to an experience of the divine by whatever name. And I don't need to engage in a thinking process to make this transition. We can talk about it in terms of surrender. Surrender is the key to opening up the sustaining experience of that. But ultimately, the experience is available within us in any moment. And so if we just come back to the bigger picture here, how do I find an experience of calm? How do I experience a sense of groundedness within my being? How do I ignite the healing power of that divine expression? And that's what I want to share with you when we look at the difference in perspective. Maybe, John, it'd be good to pause for just a moment. Somebody said it worked. I'm as surprised as you are that oh, Edward is saying, hey, Ken, I'm glad you're doing this with video. Good to see you. Deep perspective. I need a deep perspective, a clear, deep perspective. Okay. All right, Sue. I don't see any other questions coming at this time. So I am after a clear, deep perspective, and I'm trying to offer that in conjunction with some drawing and some pictures and some words, but most importantly, a transmission, which we'll get started with here in just a couple minutes. So I want to share my screen again, and I'm trying to remember how to do this so that I can show you this perspective of where the light is. Oops. No. There we go. Takes a little bit. Okay. So where is the light? We go through life. The source of the light is outside of us. We're out on the sea. And the seas are big and rough or smooth and calm. If the sea of life is smooth and calm, we're happy. And if it's rough, we're not. Oops, that looks angry. Maybe that does make us angry. And over here, we might have the experience of clouds in the sky, right? And the question is, for the person in this dynamic, where is the light? The person who is engaged at this level of living life. For this person, it's all about the external dynamics, the sea being smooth or the sea being rough, clouds or direct sun. But if we go a little bit lower into the sea, something can begin to change. But the challenge is, and over here, maybe this person is neutral. This person is happy, maybe still, But still, at this level of engaging in the world, the light is still coming in from above. And so there's still an attempt to influence the dynamics of our lives. Think about it from here. In controlling consciousness, I'm trying to influence my life. If I'm influencing my life, even though the source of the influence is inside of me, I'm still in separation, meaning I still think that the light is outside of me. But if I sink deeper, and I'm just going to say below the zone where you're deep enough in the ocean, where it's clear that the light source that was coming from above can't reach down there. It's too dark. There's a different kind of resonance that's available, and it's coming from an experience of the light within. This person who has been trying to affect the storm that's going on in their life all of a sudden is discovering the storm may still be going on above me, but down here, the light is within me. And then there's an even deeper level. And at this level, we're really happy. And the light is radiating out in a big way for both of these people. Oops. It's influencing all sorts of things, not just an experience of light within, but now light everywhere. And notice both of these experiences can be going on still while the sun is out for this person, while the clouds are out and the storms, the sea is choppy over here. The question is, how do we get to this experience? How do we make this happen? What do we do to make this happen? And we could go back to our movement in consciousness and how we build the house, but I want to simplify it actually. I want to think about this just in terms of you, wherever you are in your life. And I'm going to assume you're happy since we're on the call together. I think you came to the call happy. We're all happy sitting here together already. And you could be thinking thoughts. You could be feeling things. Oops, that's not a very good heart. But you could be feeling things. And I don't know how to draw this, but there's a level of being which I relate down to the hips. Okay. So there's this is happening at the level of the heart. This is happening at the level of thinking, and this is happening at the level of being. And I want to relate this, and I just did a YouTube video about this. So this may be familiar to some of you, but I'm going to explain this in a little greater depth here. If we think about our lives as a ship at sea, and what sea are we looking at? We're looking at this sea, right? The sea of sailing along out here. So in our bodies, there is a mast and a sail, and this is embodiment at the level of the mind. It involves thinking. And from these other stages of consciousness, these earlier stages of consciousness, in victim consciousness, we're embodied in our minds, and in controlling consciousness, we're embodied in our minds and our hearts. So there's a lot of emphasis that's placed on thinking and feeling. This is like the mast of a sail ship and the sails. But the thing is, if we put this out at sea, this mast on its own out at sea, it's not going to stand up in the ocean on its own. It's going to fall over, and it can't do anything. Doesn't matter what thoughts we have. The mind on its own can't effectively do anything. I don't mean the mind isn't capable of affecting things. I mean at the level of deep sustaining resonance, at the level of sustaining calm, at the level of igniting your inner healing power. Okay. And I see some questions popping up. And I will get to them here in just a minute. If we're embodied down at the level of our heart, we plant the mast in the ship. And this looks like something that is meaningful, right? And if we put this ship out at sea, right, and the winds of opportunity or the winds of challenge start blowing into this mast, we think, based on what we can see with our eyes, that looks like it's going to work. And in this earlier stage of consciousness, here in controlling consciousness, where we're telling God what to do this thing, God, we think, hey, this ship can do it all. But the problem is this ship will tip over because it's top heavy. When the wind blows here, it exerts pressure this way and there's no counterbalance. On the surface, it appears that everything is all set. And how do we then take up the potential of our true divine expression through our being? It's when we drop into our hips. And there we have, it's difficult to draw these, but it's a keel, it's a counterweight. And it's not, you can't even see it. It's below the surface. This is the water line right here. So we can't even see whether the keel's been deployed or not. But once this happens, when the winds of opportunity come up in our life, something profoundly different happens. And if we look at it over here, we'll see it. The person who's embodied is having an experience of sinking down. They're much more capable of encountering the winds of challenge and the winds of opportunity in their life and being able to realize their full divine potential, not just the power of their mind, not just the power of their feeling heart, but also in context with their being. And if we look at our bodies, our heads sit atop our hearts, which sit atop our hips. And when we're in our bodies, and we're going to have an experience of this here in just a minute, as soon as I answer these questions, something radically different begins to happen. I'm still getting used to being on video, John. It's a little bit of a challenge for me. I keep forgetting that I have to draw a picture and I can't just close my eyes. I'm trying my best though. John Paduchek, by the way, if you just are joining, is helping me on the video front. So I'm talking to John, but I'm obviously talking to everyone, not just
You're
John.
doing great, Ken.
So here's what I want to say to everyone sitting here. Thank you for your patience with the drawing. What I'm trying to convey to you is when we sink in, something radically different happens. We become present. Without being present, we aren't open to the experience of who we really are. Right? And Eckhart Tolle has written extensively and talked about this for years. It's profound insights. But that being present isn't possible until we've come all the way into the hips, until we embody our souls fully. What else happens? The embodied experience of the divine mystery. What does that mean? Look, when I first began exploring this healing gift that God expresses through me, I had no understanding intellectually, not at this level. I didn't really understand at a feeling level, and I didn't understand it at a being level. Something just happened through me. My hands and feet started tingling and buzzing, and miracles started happening for people. And sometimes they were what they wanted, and sometimes they had nothing to do with what they wanted. They were just things that were unfolding. This is what the divine mystery is. Oh, I'm writing things and not sharing my screen right now. Let me share my screen again so you can see what I'm writing. It's a little embarrassing. Oh my goodness. Okay. We're present. This is what I was drawing before. Until we're embodied, we can't be present. Once we are, the divine mystery begins expressing, and this is how we ignite. Oops. This is how we ignite healing power. And it's not healing power of the mind, although this is beautiful. It's not the healing power of the heart, although this is beautiful. But these two, when subordinated to your being presence, it's unbelievable. something profoundly different begins unfolding and expressing in, through, and as you. And it doesn't require you to think your way there. It's a being state that unfolds at every level of your body and your heart and your mind. And that is where we can really begin making a profound difference in our own lives. It's something that opens up the true miraculous expression of who we are as undistorted expressions and extensions of the divine. It really is incredible. And I want to answer the questions. Let me see if there, well, maybe there are no new questions.
There is one.
Oh,
From
Claire. Yeah, I'm a channeler, so I'm used to surrendering, but I feel like I fluctuate from one state to another. Victim, controlling consciousness, surrender, union, and back again, depending on the days and how challenging a situation is. Is it possible to remain anchored in union consciousness at all times? You know, this is a great question, Claire. It's a really powerful question. I want to pull my extraordinary artwork up so that we can look at this for a moment, because what you're talking about is the journey of integration. So I think what we want when we're thinking about these things is we want to have this experience of 1, 2, 3, 4, right? And I call God consciousness stage 0. We're born there. But if we have to go through these, and from my perspective, I've tried to figure out how to represent this visually so that you can see what is being built, and each earlier step is built upon the prior ones. This is the best thing I've come up with so far. I've been asking God for months, God, can you give me an image that I could draw that would help convey the stages of consciousness? I don't like the image of a pyramid, because the implication is that victim consciousness is lesser. I've used the metaphor or the example, it's not even a metaphor, or the allegory of the developmental journey we go through as human beings. We crawl, then we stand, then we walk, and so on. But that's problematic, because that seems to imply that when we're having experiences in victim consciousness, we've somehow regressed. And actually, I don't think that's true at all. I think what we're doing is we're integrating. And maybe what I should do is draw a fresh picture that doesn't have all this excitement on it. So we've got God consciousness, we've got victim consciousness, we have controlling consciousness, we have conduit, and we have union or unity. So what happens in conduit consciousness with surrender is that we actually begin revisiting these other stages of consciousness and integrating the things that aren't integrated. And what's actually being integrated in this process is the apparently separate self is being animated. So it's almost like these traumas or wounds, we tend to have an experience of them in our bodies. So these things might actually be showing up at different places in our physical body or emotionally. And without them being animated, there's no way to actually transmute them or integrate them. We just keep tripping over them over and over again. And we start having this experience like, this thing is huge. This is a black hole I need to somehow avoid and stay away from. But actually, if we go through a process of embodiment, what we end up with is, it's like building a fire. I've never drawn a picture of a fire before, but let's say these are logs and here's the fire. These are flames, okay? The more deeply embodied we are, the bigger this fire gets. And eventually it becomes this bonfire of, from a certain religious perspective, it might be the bonfire of the embodied Christ or the embodiment of the Holy Spirit. I don't mean to have a Christian perspective on this. We can look at every single spiritual tradition, and this modified version of this language expresses. for everyone. And if you have no spiritual tradition or religious tradition, it doesn't matter. It doesn't have to be a religious conversation or even a spiritual conversation. Your particular beliefs are whatever they are. It's fine. No big deal. From my standpoint, I think it's essential that you show up as you are and engage in these experiences if you feel called to them. The point is, as you embody, if you allow yourself to feel this, allow it to express when you're doing embodiment, then what ends up happening is it disappears. There must be an eraser on this thing. And the problem with using language like disappear is that it's like we've cleared it, but it's actually not being cleared. It's being transmuted. So this thing which appeared in separation over here in this stage of consciousness has been transmuted by the fire of your embodied presence. And now this is expressing not as a wound or as a trauma, but another aspect of your divine presence. It's part of your light now. So this thing which used to look like unresolved trauma is now an aspect of your brilliant expression. And back to your question, Claire, this is happening all the time in conduit consciousness. And we can even go up here in union consciousness and still vacillate or move back, because in some aspects, we are still surrendering. By the way, you can't surrender your way into union consciousness. Surrender is an act of separation. The roof here is separation. Once you move here into the attic, again, bad metaphor, but I don't know how else to describe it to you. Once you move into union consciousness, you're not in separation anymore. So you could be having an experience of union consciousness in certain aspects of your life, and other aspects of your life aren't as integrated. And when you combine an embodiment practice with this dynamic, these things are transmuted by the fire of your embodied divine presence and integrated into and expressed through the whole self here, which you begin to become identified with here in conduit consciousness. And eventually there's a transition into union consciousness. The transition is as inevitable as water that's traveling downstream and then going over waterfalls. We can talk more about that if there are questions about that. And to your question, yes, I do believe it is possible for us as human beings to eventually integrate so much that we are able to have an experience of the whole house. The only stage of consciousness that includes all prior stages of consciousness is union consciousness. That's not true here. In victim, we transition, and we transition here and then go back and integrate. But all of these are included here. And by the way, in each stage, if we just number these, right? This is 0, this is 1, 2, 3, 4. In 0, we're having an experience of reality. In 1, we're having an experience of what appears to be real. Are there 2 P's in appears? I don't know. To be real. Sorry, I can't spell. In 2, it's a new version of reality. In 2, it's what I can impact or control. It's a new reality. Very different from here. This is all about taking responsibility. In this experience, we're back to what is actually real as we integrate these dynamics. And then here, it's integrated and embodied. That is to say, here it's being integrated. Here it is throughout the entirety of your being. So again, we're back to this person who is discovered the light within here. And in this state, that is radiating out into every single aspect of their world. And if we go back to this drawing, that's down here. And this is actually a continuum. This experience, whoops. This is a continuum. This is an experience that extends deeper and deeper. Okay, let me see if there are any other questions that are coming up. I don't see any other questions. John, is there anything coming in on YouTube? We've got plenty of capacity from what I can tell, but is there anything else that you're seeing coming in?
I was going to say, there's the question from Jessica, and then Myra asked a question, how can you tell if you're embodied?
So you'll have an experience of embodiment. I'm going to facilitate a session in embodiment here in just a few minutes. My goal is to hold our time together to 90 minutes. I think we'll probably run longer than that today. We won't run much past 2 hours total. I'd rather focus as much time as possible on transmission, but these are great questions. How can you tell if you're embodied? Well, the first thing that happens when you're embodied is you become totally present. And so the question is, what happens for you? That's Myra is asking the question. What happens for you, Myra, when you're completely present? For me, one of the things that I feel when I'm completely present, and there's all these ancillary things that take place, like my hands and feet buzz like crazy, like they're doing that right now. I feel totally calm. I feel super grounded, but I'm not trying to ground. That's one of the things. I don't want to switch back and forth between remember the image where I'm in separation, the pyramid or the triangle is like this, that is things are happening to me, or I'm in this is the pyramid looks like this, something like this, where I'm in the empowered state. In an empowered state, I would ground to the earth, or I would draw the divine in through the crown of my head, because I need to direct these things, right? I have to control. But if I'm in an embodied state, I'm in a being state. I am. I don't have to do something to ground. I am being the grounded expression, if that makes sense. There's all sorts of other things that happen. We'll experience it together. I mean, one of the things that can happen with soul embodiment is spontaneous healing. It's extraordinary. Amazing, extraordinary things happen. And the reason for that is that we're opening to an experience of who we are. One way that we can language this is we're lifting the veil of the illusion of separation and stepping into or opening to the experience of what is real within the entirety of our being. Someone said, you're doing a great job. That's wonderful. Thanks for the feedback. Devi wrote, other communities call it waking down. Yes. Ken, for others to visualize coming down to the hips with soul presence. Yeah, exactly. Lots of people refer to this process of ascending. And I think it's actually the exact opposite. I believe we are descending. The challenge from my perspective, and now I am going to flip the screen on so you can see what I'm talking about. I'm sorry, the camera shakes. Share. Okay, let's see if we can pull this excitement up again. Okay, the problem from my standpoint is if we have to ascend, it's happening here or here, right? And we're trying to become more than what we actually are. If we open a new sketch, here we are in life, the waves are big or the waves are small or flat or whatever. And these are the circumstances. This is the messiness or the unpleasantness or the COVID-19 or whatever, right? And if only, and so here we are, the person over here is happy because they're in calm seas, and the person over here is unhappy because they're in rough seas. And either way, this person is trying to figure out, how do I sustain this? Do I have to keep thinking about something and feeling it to have an experience of it out here in reality to keep having this calm seas, sun's up here? Or do I want to ascend? Do I want to try to become more than what I am? Do I want to transcend the limit of being a human being and become divine? That's not how I see it. How I see it is the divine light shines in from below. It runs into these little grains of sand called the illusion of separation, and they cast shadows up. Some of this pure light streams through, but some of it hits the thing and it casts a shadow. I don't know what a shadow would look like this. And I didn't draw on the right scale. So if we go to the next screen, here we are. And that light is shining up and expressing in the body, and those shadows from those grains of sand, oops, sorry, are casting up, and something's showing up in the body here or whatever in the mind. And the challenge is, if we have to become more than we are, then we stop being fundamentally who we are as human beings. Whereas if we recognize this dynamic, we have an opportunity to go beneath the illusion of separation and uncover, to excavate down to our innate wholeness, to that which we really are, which is always here, always. No matter what's going on up here, no matter how these grains of sand are distorting the divine light. So the challenge is, how can we drop down here and have this experience? And as it turns out, we can do that. We can actually do that. And it's not a function of thinking. It's not something we have to hold in our awareness. Remember, in controlling consciousness, I'm trying to manage my world by projecting an idea. But when I'm in conduit consciousness, I am opening up to that which is already within, beneath the sand. And what's the first step in that process? Soul embodiment. It's all about soul embodiment. Okay, let me see if there's one. Let's all get into this empowered state. We can use some spontaneous healing now. We're actually going to get into a surrendered state, Karen. Okay. And you're right. Let's make a transition, shall we? Let's stop talking. Let's get down to real work. Okay. So I don't know what people are doing on your side of the camera. I'm obviously sitting here and I'm going to slump back a little bit, and I'm going to encourage you to drink some water or some other, and I'm going to mute so you don't have to listen to me drinking the water. But I'm going to hydrate for a moment. I go through a lot of water when I'm in session, and I've been talking for an hour now and I haven't had any. So give me just a moment and then we'll get started with the transmission. So I invite you, while I'm doing this, if you need to take a break, bathroom break or whatever, stretch your legs and then get into a comfortable position. And it's really important not to be doing something else. So don't operate a motor vehicle. Don't do any heavy equipment stuff. I don't know how you could be participating in this anyway if you were doing that. But if you're listening to the audio, set everything else aside. And you can look at my face, but I'm actually going to close my eyes. I'm going to be much more comfortable with my eyes closed anyway. I'll leave the camera on. You can look at me if you want, but it's however uncomfortable I am with that's fine. I just close my eyes. So I'm going to invite you to close your eyes in a moment. So get into a comfortable place, take a break, hydrate. I'm going to drink a bunch of water, but I'm right here with you. I'm just muting the line. Okay, there's something really profound that begins happening when we hold our palms towards the sky. Maybe you're already familiar with it. It's a beautiful receiving position. And so I'm going to invite you to put your body in a way that is comfortable for you. And lots of people say it's important for you to have your feet on the ground, but if I could show you, my feet are not on the ground. They're on a, whatever this thing is called. I don't have language right now. Whatever. My feet are up on a cushion, okay? Because that's what's most comfortable for me when I'm in transmission. So my point is, get into a comfortable position for you where you're not driving, where you're not trying to multitask. And with your eyes closed, breathing in and out through the nostrils, palms to the sky if it's comfortable for you. We're going to do some breathing to begin. And then at the close of the breathing, I'm going to go through kind of a shortened version of divine connecting breath. There are other ways that you can um, learn divine connecting breath. I'll share them with you. I'm remembering things that I forgot to do at the beginning of our time together, and I'm not going to worry about it now. We'll handle it later. It's no big deal. I meant to mention this workshop on Wednesday. Yeah, we're just going to go into transmission right now. I just want to make sure you know how to get more information and more support if you want to go deeper, whatever. Well, I'll follow up on email with you. It's not important right now. Okay. With your eyes closed, breathing in and out through the nostrils, palms to the sky. I'm just going to walk you through it. All you have to do is be able to hear my voice. And if you drop out, you drop out. You might feel like you're going to sleep. You're not going to sleep. You're just doing a deep level of work. But it's why it's so important not to be driving. Don't even be walking. Just give yourself a break. You could be lying down, sitting, whatever's comfortable for you. We're going to do some breathing. And let's just do it. I'm going to stop describing. Let's make this all happen. Deep breath in. Hold. And as you begin releasing this breath, letting go of everything that has come before in this day, all the way out to the count of 8, letting go of those thoughts that are dominant in your mind or have been dominant in your mind. That could be worries or fears, thoughts of productivity, whatever it is. I don't want to go through a list, just whatever has been dominant. Could be happy thoughts. Let go of happy thoughts. Why would you release happy thoughts? Because as you blank the slate, as you let go, the divine floods in more fully, in, through, and as you. So each step of this breathing process, we're releasing. You can let go of noise, you can let go of dissonance, scary stuff, whatever. That's fine. But if you've let go of all of that, or you're in a real deep state of resonance, then begin letting go of that experience of resonance, that you may open up to more fully experience and be the undistorted expression of the divine that you are. Another deep breath in, hold. And as you begin letting go of this breath now, letting go of everything that has come before since you were born, all the way out to the count of 8. And with that, the thoughts and feelings in your heart, emotions and so on that have been dominant lately, all the way out to the count of 8. We're breathing like this if you want. If you want to just open your eyes very slowly, but whatever tempo it is for you is perfect. The divine is within no matter what. Divine's within if you breathe fast, if you breathe slow, if you're sitting, if you're lying. God is always there. That light is undistorted within you now. So however you do this is perfect. Whatever happens for you, whatever comes into your awareness and your experience, it's all perfect. Another deep breath in and hold. And as you begin releasing this breath now, letting go of everything that has come before since the inception of your soul, all the way out to the count of 8. The thinking, the feeling, and the being. with your eyes closed, in your mind's eye, notice a cue of breath in front of your nostrils, in front of your face. It extends out. You breathe in a breath. It comes in through the nostrils, and this cue of breath, just another unit of breath, comes into that cue, into the back. And the cue of breath in front of your face is there just to serve you. No one else, just you. And the breath has no criteria or condition for you. It doesn't check with you. Did you kick the dog this morning? Cut somebody off in traffic? Or more likely, get upset with yourself in your space? Probably fewer and fewer of us are driving these days. Doesn't matter the thoughts you're thinking, the beliefs you hold, your political beliefs, your sexual orientation, your gender identity. None of it matters. Ethnicity of origin doesn't matter. The breath flows in through your nostrils to support you on every level of your being, without condition, without criteria. And you may notice in your mind's eye a color beginning to infuse itself through the cue, like food coloring in a dropper that just enters into a pitcher of water, begins spreading itself. But this is through the breath. And this color might be static or it might be dynamic. However it shows up for you is fine. If you're imagining a color, that's fine. Maybe pick something that's not present in your body naturally, except perhaps in your eyes. And with your next breath, be with the breath from the perspective of the color as it flows in through the nostrils, up towards the crown, and then down into the lungs. And even stay in the lungs, just in your mind's eye. And notice as that color begins pouring in, the color is a vector to demonstrate, to illustrate for you how the breath is moving in and through the body. Initially, if we move time forward a little bit, faster, the breath moves through the lining of the lungs. We can see that color migrating there, and then into the bloodstream of the body, and then eventually into each cell. And there's this simple conclusion we can draw. The breath is becoming you, and you are becoming the breath. And just notice on every level where the yes comes in, the confirmation of that. Intellectually, sure, of course, oxygen, lungs, bloodstream, yeah, that makes sense. The mind. And you may see it visually. You might be imagining it, or you might be starting to see intuitive ideas. You might even feel in your body a sense of physical resonance, a yes of sorts, buzzing, tingling, warmth. Whatever you're feeling or not, it's fine, whatever that is. The breath is becoming you, and you are becoming the breath. And if you return that perspective, that awareness back now beyond the lungs, maybe even outside of you, and expand back, maybe expanding above the space where you are right now or the region where you live, just notice how, if we expand back even further, the breath of the planet is a single unit of breath. And that breath of the planet is serving you and all the people that live with you or around you or near you, and on a broader basis. And right now, there's maybe some noise, some dissonance being stirred up in the mind. Yeah, but the breath, I mean, is that how this virus transmits? It's this connection that exists between us by the breath of the planet. It brings us the totality of the experience of divinity. It also helps us release the idea that we're separate from one another, separate from ourselves, separate from the divine. So I just invite you to be with what is unfolding in your awareness, recognize those areas of resistance that show up for you, and then feel as they melt away, as you begin realizing, wow, the breath of the planet has been serving us all the entirety of your life. And in fact, it's been supporting life on this planet, however long it's been supporting life on this planet. And so as you breathe in and out, you are actually connected directly, not just to the people in your region or your hemisphere, but each one of us all around the planet. And not just those of us who are alive today, those of us who were alive long ago. I said that wrong. Everyone who was once alive and breathing, and everyone who will ever be alive and breathe, all here now. Even time and space begin disappearing when we begin noticing this breath of the planet. With each breath, you are connected to every single person. But the connection doesn't just happen by the breath with people, it also connects us to every instance of consciousness, sentient and non, trees and plants and animals and birds and water and fish and everything. With each breath, you are connected to everyone and everything above, upon, and within the planet. Even, we could say, the planet itself. You might even feel yourself beginning to breathe by and for and of the planet. And maybe you can feel that physical resonance moving through your body. And maybe not. It's okay either way. And notice as the breath of the planet expands, it becomes the breath of the cosmos. For at the very edge of our atmosphere, that touches space, and in turn, that touches every other aspect, till eventually the breath of the planet becomes the breath of the cosmos. And with that, with each breath, you are connected to everyone and everything throughout all of creation, including that energy that underwrites everything else, the divine. Perhaps initially you perceive it as a light at a great distance on the other side of the cosmos, yet drawing closer with each breath. Eventually close enough that you can perceive within it those twin frequencies, the frequency of perfect health, not just physical or emotional health as we might understand or comprehend as human beings, every iteration of health, known and unknown, in combination with the light, the resonance, the frequency of the divine itself. They're intertwined such that there is no separating one from the other. And notice that light permeates every aspect of the cosmos. And with each breath drawing closer until instantaneously it connects into each of the smallest aspects of you on every level, known and unknown. And be it a waveform or a particle, connecting in and inviting each of the smallest aspects of you to return to your natural state of divine resonance and alignment. The artifacts of dissonance appearing to fall away and gather at that universal drain. For whatever remains in separation, I invite you to remove the universal plug. I'll do the same. We can observe the divine is becoming you, and you are becoming the divine. Let's begin. The process of embodiment is a process of descending, supporting the soul and descending from the top of the head, from the crown, all the way down through the core of your being, down into the hips. For men, we embody just below the pelvic girdle, down into the testicles, and for women, into the pelvic girdle. The rest of our bodies, our legs, our feet, and so on, are like a siphon. Once the circuit is connected, embodiment takes place on those levels as well. And for you to support your soul embodiment, at least right now, is just to be with whatever's coming up. Remember the fire burning brightly, transmuting. Your only job is to feel and express. Could be emotions, could be sensations in the body, could be something that makes sense intellectually, could be something that doesn't make sense. Whatever it is, just feel it fully. Embodiment is much more than just an energetic dissension or an animation of each aspect of the energy system. It's in each part of your physical vessel being animated. So it's not just down the center line, not just through the chakras. It's through the totality of your being. Just be with it as it unfolds, as I support and witness that within you. Descending from the crown down, moving lower. 7. 6. There's an alchemy that is extraordinary when you express whatever is coming up, when you feel it fully. That, in combination with your embodied soul, transmutes whatever it is that you may uncover and experience the divine, the light, and all the byproducts of the light, your healing power, and much more. Probably the best way to say it isn't to refer to it as your healing power or even divine healing power, but just divine presence as you. 5. There's a lot going on in the body. Just be with it, whatever it is. Four. This transition into the abdomen is the transition point between individual will, which emanates down from the head, and divine will, which emanates up from the hips. And so there can be a really interesting sort of tension, sometimes at or even below the level of the sternum in the body. This tension point can be, from my perspective, can be described with a lot of, or evidenced by lots of digestive challenges and so on. And so there might be a very rich set of experiences of aspects that are held in separation as we move into the abdomen that are coming up to be transmuted. And once again, I just encourage you to feel them fully. Yeah, doing beautiful work. As you embody on a deeper level, opening up to this deeper experience of who you really are. It's not an oppositional dynamic. It's not an experience of this in opposition of something. It is an experience of this in union with all that you are. That's the going home in your body. So we don't need to invoke protections or any of these types of things because we're sinking into the experience of divine light. That is all there is in actual reality. As you open up to that experience, the embodied experience of the divine within, of who you really are, something extraordinary begins taking place. We don't even have to describe it. It's not about language. It's not about thinking or even feeling. It's a being state that has as its origin the reality of who you really are, something for which there are no words. Three. Sometimes thoughts of loved ones, of other people on the planet, people you care about, people who are suffering or struggling with something physically or otherwise might come into your awareness. It's not about pushing other people out of your awareness. It's just about being in the depth of who you really are. As you animate and express the truth of who you are, that process enlivens in others the same without any intention, without sending anything. I am not sending anything to you. I am witnessing who you are, but even that is a poor linguistic placeholder for what's really happening. The divine in me is enlivening the divine in you. And even that isn't right, for we are not separate. We are all one. The words don't matter at all. Moving lower. Two, coming home into the hips. There may be discomfort that comes up in the head, like a headache, just a sign of things coming up to integrate and they are and will integrate. Just be fully with your experience, whatever it is. Mhm. If you find yourself getting caught up in memories or projections, any experience other than here and now, whatever that is for you, you can remind yourself with each breath you are connected to everyone and everything on our planet, in our cosmos, the divine, the light, the twin frequencies, connecting in on every level, known and unknown. The divine is becoming you, and you are becoming the divine. One, one, one. If you were sitting on the banks of a river or a stream near where you are right now, you might look upon the river and feel a sense of deep relaxation and calm. You might wonder, what if I held an intention? And so, with that thought, the intention unfolds. The river is flowing downhill, and lo and behold, the river is flowing. Still, you drop the intention and the river still flows. You turn your back on the river, and still the river is flowing. You walk away, forget of the experience of sitting by the river, forget the river even exists. Still, the river is flowing. So too with each breath you take. You are connected to everyone and everything throughout the entirety of the cosmos, including that energy that underlies everything else, the divine. A light drawing closer with each breath, the twin frequencies eventually connecting in on every level known and unknown. The river is flowing. The artifacts of dissonance falling away to gather at that universal drain, and then the plug having been pulled, releasing. The divine is becoming you, and you are becoming the divine. The river is flowing. You might even feel the resonance moving through your body. The river is flowing. In truth, you are always embodied fully. In separation, we can experience ourselves as disembodied, disconnected. But with a simple reminder, the river is flowing. We can feel the totality of what it is to be the undistorted expression and extension of the divine by whatever name, without intention, without direction, fully expressed in each and every sacred and holy moment. The river is flowing. The calm, grounded presence of your embodied soul is flowing, not just on the interior, not just at full depth, but in every part of your being and life and in the world. The river is flowing. We could hold intention, but life is then impacted by the efficacy of your intentions and your ability to express those as cleanly as possible. Why not set it all aside and just let the river flow? When you open to the depth of your embodied soul, you ignite divine presence within you. The experience of it, for divine presence is always fully ignited. But as the experience expands, all the natural byproducts of the experience of your innate wholeness begin expressing through you on every level of your being. We can be here and sink in deeper and deeper. Anytime your thoughts drift, just remind yourself, with each breath, the river is flowing. You are connected, everyone and everything, the divine, the light, the twin frequencies connecting into each and every aspect, the invitation to return to resonance and alignment. It's really between the divine and each of the smallest aspects of you. You get to just be. You might feel, you might be aware of that return to the truth of who you are. The river is flowing. Hmm. And here's another level of integration. So at each level of deeper embodiment, there's a more fully expressed and experienced animation of all that you are. and all the things you're not, all those aspects still held in separation. As that animation extends at a deeper and deeper level, these expressions of dissonance come up for attention. As you allow yourself to feel them on whatever level, physically, emotionally, or otherwise, they are transmuted, fully consumed in the fire of your embodied presence. The gift that was wrapped in separation is unwrapped and integrated, now available as a resource to be expressed by your whole self. Thus, this movement between an experience in conduit consciousness and controlling and victim consciousness is a very natural movement of deeper and deeper integration, which you might actually be feeling and experiencing in some way as we go into deeper and deeper embodiment. The deeper you sink into your being, the deeper your soul embodies, there's a fundamental shift that begins taking place. Instead of being oriented around the thinking engagement of victim consciousness, or the thinking, the mind, and the heart level embodiment of controlling consciousness, both of which are oriented on the source of light outside and how to try to secure safety or attempt to control the outer world with your thoughts. As you sink all the way into your hips, you begin experiencing and living the ancient wisdom, as above, so below. The work of below is essential as you're experiencing. As you sink in deeper and deeper, you discover the source of the light within you. That light extends out from you and animates and expresses in every aspect of your life. It does so of its own accord. The river is flowing. You need not push it or direct it. Just open up to its expression. In controlling consciousness, we have to tell God what to do. In conduit, now you are the divine servant, not the divine's master. You have subordinated the empowered separate self. It has surrendered. It has discovered its limits. It doesn't have the answer for its most essential need to connect to and experience unconditional love that can only come from the divine. It can only be expressed and experienced first by your embodied soul. Dropping into the hips is an act of surrender in and of itself, to allow the being expression to dominate, to flood into every part of your body and mind. That being is the most complete expression of your presence, the being expression of the embodied divine. Your presence becomes the standing wave, a carrying wave of divine resonance through every aspect of your being, your thoughts, your actions, and so on, not because they're oriented or thought or held in a certain way, but because you are, or if we say it in the first person, I am. This carrying wave resonates with all of creation, all of humanity, all of the cosmos. For everything is held within the divine container, and everything within the container is divine. Within the container of divine expression known as you, within the container of divine expression known as everyone upon our planet, within the container of everyone and everything expressed as and in and through and of the planet, our atmosphere, and so on, and through the container of the entirety of the cosmos. Everything in this container is divine. And in your embodied presence, there is no resistance. The river is flowing through you and as you, and by you and for you and of you. Once you thought, this river might destroy me. It scares me. Later you thought, I can direct this river. I can dam it and tell it what to do and make all of creation conform to my desires and goals. Still later, you unplugged your fingers from the dam of divine presence and allowed the river to flood through the entirety of your being. Still later, you realized the entirety of the cosmos, the entirety of you and every one is the complete, undistorted expression of divine presence, all one. The divine is becoming you, and you are becoming the divine. Not because words are spoken, because you are. Because in the first person, I am. Still, a thought takes up resonance. An idea, a projection, a feeling, a fear. As quickly as it comes, the invitation to remind comes even stronger. And with that, the river is flowing. With each breath, you are connected to everyone and everything, the divine, the light, the twin frequencies, connected in at every level, known and unknown, throughout your entire being and presence. The divine is becoming you, and you are becoming the divine. The river is flowing. And with these simple reminders, the resonance once again floods through your being, not because of something I have said, but because you are, because you have begun to lift the veil and experience yourself as you really are. There are many different ways we can go with our exploration. I want to invite, if there are questions or reflections that are coming up, I want to invite you to check in and ask or reflect and share. I'll give voice to the question. I'll give just a little bit here. My mouth will buzz when it's time to begin exploring. And even as we're exploring with words, this embodiment continues. Jessica shares a couple of different things here. I love the honest and transparent. I'm just going to share. You can keep your eyes closed. If you have something you want to share, you can type it in where the transmission is continuing. My hands and feet are buzzing. This is a while ago. Thank you so much. This is from Jessica. Great explanation. I've been consciously focusing on being embodied at my tailbone and bottoms of my feet and feeling awareness and sensations, attempting to let go and let God. Also doing what Claire said about bouncing back and forth. And one thing I would say is, I know there's not a question here, but just to point out, in my experience, when we come into the hips, everything else is animated. In fact, the traditional chakras are mirrored in the inverse, I've noticed. So as we move down the legs, so it's the first is mirrored and so on, the seventh in the soles of the feet. So if I tried to support the group and embodiment below the pelvic girdle, all of a sudden we would get a restriction. There would be resistance coming up. So that might be something to share. I have a question about being an empath. This is also from Jessica. I'm getting so much better at it if I talk to someone for a while. I absorb stuff. I'm not reading and have been having a hard time clearing it. It used to be that I would absorb stuff immediately. Now I'm better at expanding my aura and being embodied. How do you clear stuff that is absorbed? Embodiment will transmute all that stuff. And what you'll find is that, Jessica, it's a great question. Once you're integrated as at a deeper level and embodied, you'll find that your empath resource becomes an even more significant part of your intuitive awareness. But rather than being a pathway to dissonance, challenge, and so on, it becomes a very clean opening. And I can go more deeply into this briefly. There's a much longer kind of exploration that we can do around this. And I guess time permitting, I'm happy to go into it today. The point is, though, that if you think about that light that I drew a picture of way back when, shining up and through you, as an empath, so imagine that light that's shining up and through you is a fountain, a divine fountain of divine presence. And the sole recipient of that divine fountain and presence is you. But as empaths, and the fountain shoots up through the core, the center of your being, and out through the top of your head. And then it just showers down on you. It's so extraordinary. It's this endless experience of divine presence on every interior and exterior level of your being. As empaths, somewhere when we were young, we learned to put a plate on top of our head. It's like screwing in a metal plate on the top of a fountain, and we spray all that divine presence out all over the world or out of the room or in our household or families or whatever the dynamic is, whatever the context. And then we use that like radar, like tell me what's happening out there. And so one of the practices that I love supporting empaths in is in removing the plate on the top of the head and realizing that in your divine presence, in your embodied presence, is everything you need. And your being presence enlivens within others their being presence. And you do not need to take anything on or exchange anything with them. You don't have to send them anything, and you don't have to take on or receive it. You can be in your divine wholeness, they can be in theirs, and everything can be enlivened and come into resonance. Claire says, thank you so much. Linda says, holy freaking moly, after 2.5 years of hearing you, I get it. Anonymous attendee says, is embodiment open to being our divine self instead of being limited at our experience of our small personality ego? And if so, how do we do it? How do we guarantee? How do we create the experience of it? We don't create it, we open to it, as we just did. I think it was a question that came in before the transmission. In other words, how do I do this when I'm not with you or the group? Okay, that's a great question. So how you do this when we're not together is, first of all, you practice it, and you're welcome to practice it. This will be on replay. You can listen, experience the transmission again. And you can also, with your awareness, use a couple of visuals. There's a little bit of control there. Being able to witness yourself in embodiment is it's a pretty integrated practice. I work with spiritual messengers, and being embodied messengers is one of the practices we work on eventually. So that's a pretty advanced thing. But you can actually support, from a visualization standpoint, your soul coming in. It could be very challenging, though. The truth is, it's very powerful to be witnessed in this way. I find being witnessed myself, I don't mean just witnessing myself, but being witnessed by another is very important for me on a regular basis, because I'm not on the hot seat, so to speak. I'm not responsible for being the witness, and I offer that and do that for others as well. And it can be a very, very profound practice. But yes, it is possible eventually. What is transmuting? Beverly says, I became like an accordion, breathing in and out, and eventually with beautiful angelic music. Phenomenal. Sue says, what is transmuting is collective resistance. Beautiful. Neva, can you elaborate more on the relation, timing, integration between the three levels? Oh, between level 3 control and level 4 surrendering, unity consciousness. Yes. Actually, level 4 unity consciousness is not an open to surrender. And I'm not going to try to get out the iPad thing and draw right now. I'm actually, we can all close our eyes, or you can look at me, but my eyes are closed. In victim consciousness, we all move into victim consciousness. It happens early in our childhood, the movement from God consciousness to victim consciousness. I've actually written extensively about this in my first book. It's not out yet, but there's a way on my website to be notified when the book is released, and you're welcome to check that out. I'd love to share that with you. So in the movement to victim consciousness, inevitable, right? We all move into that. The movement into controlling consciousness, the timing of that is all about responsibility. Okay. And actually, there's Stephen Karpman did some really extraordinary work around the drama. He continues to do it. I believe he's still alive. Karpman's drama triangle. And it's actually a description of late victim stage consciousness, I believe. And in that, and we see that being played out actually on our planet and in politics and all sorts of different arenas right now. It's an attempt to secure control over other people. And I don't want to get lost in the weeds here and go into all this detail about something that you're not really asking about that. But that's a developmental progression in victim consciousness. At some point, we realize it's all about interior dynamic, that is accepting responsibility for my life, and pretty radical transformation. I go from no power to all the power in the world. God's angry at me to now God's my servant. Wow. Lot of extraordinary metaphysics around this, really incredible stuff that happens here, but still it's controlling consciousness. It's still in separation. It's the empowered separate self now. The transition from the empowered separate self into surrender, into conduit consciousness, that's where surrender takes place. Surrender moves us into conduit, and the transition into surrender happens when we discover, despite the ability, it's one of two things. It's actually a fascinating polarity. We either are master manifestors and we can have whatever we want, right? We can create everything we want, or we can create nothing that we want. And either way, fascinatingly enough, the conclusion is identical. It's either I can have everything I want, but I'm still not happy, or I can't have anything that I want and I'm still unhappy. And that may not sound funny to you. I'm laughing because it's extraordinary, actually, the similarity between these two. I've had the opportunity to work with master manifestors who literally can manifest anything, money, jets, blah, 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 whatever they want, hundreds of millions of dollars. And their question in private space, just with me, when I'm witnessing private session, why am I still so unhappy? They've discovered the glass ceiling of controlling consciousness. The separate self cannot resolve separation. What did Einstein say? Can't resolve the problem from the consciousness that became aware of it or created it. That's another way of saying this. In separation, we cannot separate ourselves through separation, right? We have to, the only pathway there is to let go of control. And actually, it's the ultimate act of responsibility, interestingly enough. It's 180 degrees from the transition into controlling consciousness, though. The movement into conduit is I accept complete responsibility for everything, including that I don't know. Three of the most powerful words. I don't know. Who does? And the answer eventually, the divine. And how would I open up to the divine? The answer eventually comes, oh, I'd stop holding out a stop sign to divine will. And what's a stop sign to divine will? Intention. Effectively, any expression of control in our lives. And there are many, of course. And then once we surrender, now we're having an experience of conduit consciousness. The divine expresses through me, I am God's servant. It's a profound transformation, but it's still in separation. I surrender to something other than myself. And that last transition into union is very, very interesting. My experience of it in my own journey, and I am not trying to claim that I am an embodied union all the time, not even close, just to be really clear. My initial experiences of it were that there was actually an aspect that I associated with my empowered separate self that kept coming forward, that I kept responding to through a surrender dynamic, going inside instead of outside. And eventually, when I sat with it, I realized this is actually an expression of my whole self. And it's not a polarity. It's not this or that. It's this and that. And I'm describing it with words, but those words came actually after the experience. When I realized that, it was over the waterfalls and into union. Great question. Jessica, thank you so much. Could you send out a replay? Yes. Jessica says, awesome. Susan, so does the process of feeling whatever comes up and transmuting it is something that you did regularly as you were going through this experience, Ken? Yes. I am doing that as well. Yes. Is that what you're asking, Susan? Yes. Mary, thank you for doing this, sweet brother. So great to sit with you again. I love the visuals. Much love. Great to sit with you, Mary. Linda, the drawing, the drawings made it all click. I've never fully understood your description of the grains of sand reflecting dissonance. Now I get it. Yes. This brought such clarity in my mind, heart, and body. I deeply embodied before while not fully knowing. Now I'm shining bright, radiating pure yellow love. Thank you for this fantastic experience, my friend. Susan asks, and so unity consciousness is relationship with God. We're actually in relationship with God, Susan, in every stage of consciousness. That's the thing that's so fascinating. We're never separate from the divine. I'm giggling because it's so amazing. So let's look at, I have to get out my little chart here for a second. Let's do another drawing. You shouldn't encourage me with this drawing. Somebody say, my good friend Devin Martinez was talking to me a couple weeks ago, and he said, I think drawing is a really powerful way to share ideas. I thought, oh, I want to do that. Okay, I'm going to set the Q&A aside so I can see what I'm drawing here. Let's see where that drawing is. Let's go for a simplified house. Okay. God consciousness. Victim. Control. Conduit. Union. Ties everything together and something new expresses. Here's God consciousness. Look at that. It's the foundation of everything. See? Here, 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 here. We're in relationship with God all the time. There's nothing we can do about that. There's no way to actually sever. This is an illusory state. And here we've begun piercing the illusion, but we're still in illusion because we're surrendering, which means there's me. Oops, smiling me. Oh, that doesn't look like a happy face. Let's do that again. Let's do smiley face. Yep. Okay. That's you or me, right? And here's God. And I say, okay, God, I surrender. See, God's over here. Up here, these two become one. And here we begin identifying with the whole self. You might call it the highest self, the whole self. And over here, we have this experience in both of these aspects. How do you do brackets? Is that what, yeah, sort of separate. Self. But notice it's only apparently separate. It's all part of the same house. See, it's not actually separate. See, the roof covers the whole thing. So we're in relationship with God no matter what. Something else, I wonder what I don't have. I thought I saw additional questions coming up here.
There are a couple others in the chat, Ken.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so I got one from, I gotta find it here. Give me a second. One from Marissa Clark. She asked, could you talk about prayer from unity consciousness?
Yeah, from unity consciousness. Sure. Well, that's interesting. I don't think we call it prayer anymore. I got to draw another picture, John. I'm going picture crazy here, brother. Let's see. I don't know why this doesn't just do it automatically. Okay. Are we in here? Yeah, sort of. Okay. So if we're praying, our hands, and then we're praying. Okay, and here's God. And we're praying to God. Right? And actually, this is great, right? Because this could be a stage 1 prayer. God, save me. A stage 2 prayer. And if you look at, I think I'm on the screen too. Is that right? Yeah. So in victim consciousness, we could use this hand motion. We're laying down, we're disempowered. So we're looking for someone to save. Could be God, or it could be the caped hero, right? The magician, the healer, right? Someone comes in, Shazam, everything's good. In stage 2, we're now empowered, we're standing up. So now and this prayer, except actually for stage 2, God's down here, right? Because it's God's my servant. But over here, it's the prayer is a prayer of co-creation. In stage 3, we're back on our knees. And we're saying, or sitting, I guess. That's what that person's doing. Knees are sitting. Either way, we're, oops, come on, pen. There we go. And this is a prayer of God, what would you do through me? Or have me do? And it's difficult for me to conceive of how we could talk about union consciousness as a prayer, because a prayer, it seems to me, is something that is being asked, or a request, or whatever, a way of engaging with the divine as other than me. But in union, that dynamic of separation, this is all separation, is gone here. So it's totally different. This is interesting because witnessing is it's somewhere in this continuum, isn't it? Basically, when I'm, that's one of the ways that I refer to being in transmission, is witnessing. I'm not actually doing anything, and sometimes I feel like I am, but if you asked me what I was doing, I wouldn't know how to describe it. I actually don't have a way of describing with language this. I could tell you some poetry to describe what prayer and union is. So let's use the river as an example, right? Here it's don't affect me, don't flood my life. Here it's the river goes where I tell it to go. Here the river flows this way. The river of divine presence flows this way. And here I am the river. I don't think prayer is a word that we would use in that state, but I could be wrong. That's how I would interpret it. It's a great question. John, I've sort of lost the chat window. I don't know how to get to it.
That's okay, Ken. I can read for you.
Okay.
So I got one from Maura Smith, and I associate with this one a lot myself. I'm also interested in the empath, highly sensitive experience. Often it's difficult to determine where I end and another begins. It can be a problem to know what I want versus others' influence. How can I be more aware of me?
Yeah, it's a great, yeah. That's a great point. So let's do another picture. Mary, I see in the Q&A, says maybe the only prayer in union is thank you. But even thank you, I think, is still language and separation. I think the reason why conversation this is a great question, John. I'm not ignoring this. Say again, who's it? Maura who asked it? Yeah. Okay. So Maura, I'll get to this in just a second. This is very interesting because language itself is born of separation. One of my favorite things to do is to be in transmission, in union with others in total silence, without any language at all. For me, it's much more interesting than with language. Okay, so we've got the empath question here. So the empath is over here, and you heard about the metal plate and the divine fountain is shooting out into all of this. And over here is a person who's not happy. And the question is that me or is it them? And I think, Maura, you've got it right if I'm remembering. John, help me out here if I'm not on track with this. The key for an empath for integration initially is to just focus on you. Actually, I think this is true for everyone, not just for empaths. In our developmental journey, it's very easy to become focused on what is out there. Remember the seas, the rough seas, or the currents down here. But once we drop deep enough into the ocean, the only source of light is within us. The empath is confused about what's me and what isn't me. And so when I'm writing a prescription or working with an empath one-on-one, all we're doing is focusing on the experience of you, even to the point where we might put up energetic barrier or little metal or cement curbs. This is a fun exercise. Initially, it's just to say, well, let's not worry about this steel plate up here. Let's just put these bumpers so now the water hits it and it just sprays all over you. What does that feel like? Most empaths go, oh my gosh, I never imagined that could be true. It's like the most liberating thing. And over time, we don't have to do this because this is all about separation, right? This isn't real. This is an artificial barrier. That this is also artificial. So you get to the point where you're like this, empath or anyone, right? Smile, face, and the water fountain is going up and then down. And God's love and presence is just about you. It's just all about you. If you can do that, that's extraordinary. And the level of integration that can come with that is absolutely profound. It's a very popular thing right now for people to say, well, this isn't me, it's someone else. And what I say is, if it's animating something within you, it's you, right? So if you pretend something isn't you, you're not attending to the opportunity to integrate those wounds and traumas from whatever level of separation you're sitting in. But once you do, it's still all about you, right? And then eventually you can come to a place where you can be of service with others. But rather than being of service where you're sending them thoughts or feelings towards other people, you are simply being. Here, let's get a new drawing so we're not confused. What's the being state look like? Here's an embodied messenger. They can say things or not. They can smile or grin or be completely silent. They can do a dance. They can clap their hands. They can play songs or not. They are resonating in their being presence. And others in this field What is enlivened within this? The divine within them. This is not being sent from one person to another. It's already in them. Remember, light shines in, sand, which is separation. This light is in everyone, every single one of us, no matter what we've done, does not matter. So we can all be this. This is actually who we all are. How we doing, John? We got just a couple more minutes here.
All right, we're doing good. I've got a question from Dan Horner. How does one go from surrender to unity? Is it by practicing surrender over and over? What's the plate between surrender stage and unity consciousness?
Yeah, it's a great question, Dan. Um, you can't actually surrender your way into union. It's this paradoxical state. It's the problem with this movement is this transformation from here into here is so extraordinary, right? Into this box. But we're still in separation. And the problem is, as long as we think that God is separate from us, we're here. And so this run-in into the house to going home is full of all sorts of paradox and apparent contradiction. And the only way I can say it is, it's when the or becomes and. And the way that I experienced this movement is that I was identifying this tension, this or, as related to this over here. And so I responded to it in the way that I had in this transition. I surrendered, went back inside, went deep down, deep, 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 right? And then the problem was I went back what I thought was here. But when I finally sat with it, I realized, wait a second, this instinct, which was alive and well with my empowered separate self, is now showing up from my whole self. And I'm still experiencing it as an or. Oh my goodness. It's an and, not an or. It's not really a direct answer, Dan, but it's the best one I've got right now. Yeah, here's another person who's asking a question that I want to respond to. John, maybe we can run just a little bit. I have another commitment in my schedule. Here's what I'll say. Let me just say this real quick. Can I, we're still in transmission. I'm going to close the transmission before we wrap up today. Okay. So I'm going to answer as many questions as I can. Oh, I'm sharing. I'm raising my hands like we're all looking at me and we're looking at it. Here I am. I'm going to answer as many questions as I can. Okay. And for those of you who would like to dive deeper with this, there is a workshop, a virtual workshop that I'm doing on Wednesday. And the point of this workshop is to go deeper. And in fact, it's called the Deep Dive Workshop. It's really simple. We're going to start at noon Eastern, and the sessions are all lined out, and we'll put the link to the website up, and it'll go out in the thing. I don't want to get into all of it right now. I'm just telling you that it's going to be available. We'll put it in the description on the replay, and we'll make sure you have all the resources for that. Okay. And there was an early bird discount thing over the weekend, and somebody who is involved in an essential part of our society, I mean, global society, asked, because they were working all weekend, is there any way I can do the early bird? And I thought, I'm just going to do the early bird for everyone. Everyone's an early bird. Everyone who participates gets to be an early bird. So I don't want to focus on that right now. I want to answer as many questions as I can, but I'm telling you, to go deeper, for us to engage more, to do more Q&A, etc. There's a workshop on Wednesday. It's virtual. It's the world we're living in right now. And I wanted to respond and offer you that resource. Okay, so, and I'd love for everyone to participate. If you feel drawn to it, hallelujah, let's hang out for the day on Wednesday. What does functioning as a human, this is another anonymous person, what does functioning as a human being look like in unity consciousness? I know that I am, so how do I brush my teeth, go to work, talk to my kids, pay my bills, and move through the human experience? I am and know all are here. How do I live as a human through this experience knowing I'm integrated? I ask because as I get these glimpses of unity consciousness, the unknown and fear of how to exist with this freedom is what prevents me from being as a human on this earth. Does that make sense? Amen. It makes so much sense. Here's the thing we're afraid of is the death of the separate self. That fear is coming from the separate self. So as we look at the precipice of union consciousness from the perspective of the separate self, it imagines there's a death that's going to happen. The separate self is going to die. But actually, the separate self is going to integrate. The separate self is the whole self. It's just those wounds. Now I'm going to do drawings with my hands here. It's the wounds that are in this triangle and in the other triangle, in the inverted triangle, the empowered and the disempowered triangle. That's where those wounds are coming from. But they're actually, once they're integrated, they're a piece of your whole self. Okay, so the thing that you're grappling with appears and feels as though you're moving on the verge of union. And I'm sure that is bringing it front and center. And the key to remember is that there is a deeper level of surrender for you next. When that fear is showing up, that fear is the separate self. It is the empowered separate self. And that is where surrender comes in. It's not a move into union at that point. It's a move into conduit consciousness. How do we experience embodied union? Well, I don't think there's a homogeneous dynamic that unfolds in union consciousness. I think we all have our own unique experiences of it. But what I can tell you is that from my perspective, and I wrote about this in my book, I don't believe that the ego disappears. I believe that the separate ego disappears, but there's still an ego that's expressing as the whole self. So I think in some ways, chop wood, carry water, right? We've heard that phrase before, and there's a lot of validity to and power to that statement. It's almost like, I'm just going to keep going on with life as it is. I'm just having a more integrated experience. The separate self, the empowered separate self in particular, imagines cotton candy is floating down from the sky and all these incredible things are changing. And I mean, relative to the suffering and pain that exists in separation as an artifact of those grains of sand from the illusion of separation, that's true. But in terms of actually having an experience of integrated union, I mean, I haven't had that experience. It doesn't mean it's not available. I'm not trying to knock other people have claimed it. I'm just telling you from my standpoint, the experience of embodied union is much more sustainable than we might imagine, and it is. Go ahead, John.
I was going to say, I have one last question in the chat, and I was going to ask, would you like me to put up the link for the workshop?
Yeah, we could put up the link for the workshop.
It in the chat.
Yeah, I don't even understand how that works. Does that work with
we'll just create a link in the chat.
Okay, and everyone can follow that. They'll see it in there.
Yep,
okay.
I'll put that there next.
Okay,
so,
good.
Eve Adam asks you, why do we seem to seek God outside of us? Everything is God. We're divine, evolving. Yes.
Yes. Yeah, okay. We got to go back to the whiteboard again. We got to. I wish I could snap my fingers and this would happen really fast, because that would be just a sign that I'm more integrated and we're having a niftier experience together. Okay. I don't actually see this as an evolutionary dynamic. And I can't remember who asked this. Can you remind me, John, what the name was?
That was Eve.
Eve. I think this is I think this is a developmental dynamic. Okay. Here's God consciousness. Here's victim consciousness. Control. Sorry for the heavy sigh. I was trying to put CC, and CC doesn't work because conduit. Conduit. So the question is, why do we keep seeking outside of ourselves? And the answer to that has to do with this move. When we take responsibility and we take control, it's a move to the interior, right? Because here, everything is happening to me, right? God is forgotten about me. Oh, I keep forgetting there's a camera on me as well. I could do both. God has forgotten about me, and I am having an experience of my disempowered separate self. Over here, I'm in having an experience of my empowered separate self. And the move is to go inside to affect outside, right? So we hear people who say things like, as above, so below. And what they think they're talking about is, let's go back because I've already drawn this. Here it is. So they think they're talking about this. The below are the thoughts that are having. The above is telling God what to do and then having this experience above. The reason why we are so caught in this dynamic, Eve, is because we are in separation. And even after we have surrendered into conduit, we're still in separation and we're integrating. We're integrating these wounds. These things are coming to now express as part of the whole self. So we're just working through the illusion of separation. That's the dynamic that's going on. And the illusion of separation is so darn compelling. It makes us think that we're all sitting here together on this conference line, having an experience of a deeper connection because we're in transmission and blah, blah, blah. But the reality is we're actually, none of us are separate. We are all one. We are together. And I don't just mean the people on the call. I mean, everyone on the planet, every expression of consciousness in the entire universe, it's all one. Do you know, when I begin a transmission, when I say, let's begin, I become aware of the aspect of me that is expressing as you. I'm not casting energy out. I'm simply becoming aware of the part of me. And the reason why we don't do that is because we are caught in separation thinking, this is outside of me. How can I affect or control that? And only through these experiences and this developmental journey, that's where I started talking about. It's developmental. Let's flip back to the screenshot. John, John, someday I won't laugh at myself and I'll seem a little more professional when I do this. I'll just act like, yep, this is how it goes. This is the process. This is a developmental journey. Oops, I've got the eraser on. This is a developmental journey. I have to have the disempowered separate self to get to the empowered separate self. I have to have the empowered separate self to surrender. I can't move from victim into conduit. If I surrender from the disempowered separate self, I just am a bigger victim. I have to move in this developmental journey. There is no other way to go through this process. I don't actually think this is evolutionary. I think we know all of this. The experience of going through this feels evolutionary because we've never been through it before. I've never been through it. You've never been through it. But the fact, as I see it, is that these steps are understood and known as generic ideas. And as we move through them, through that developmental process, we shift from the illusion of separation being the primary lens that we are experiencing the world through to the experience of what is actually real, not just the whole self, but union. There is no separation. Once the house gets built, once we come home, all of these experiences are valid. These are a valid, they're self-referencing through each of these first three developmental stages. They're integrated and an aspect contained within. This is why teaching that is done in union consciousness is always a metaphor, parable, or personal narrative. And here's one way you know it's in union consciousness. It resonates at every stage of consciousness because it is all contained within it. Okay. If only sharing the screen were as easy as stopping to share the screen. All I have to do is hit a button to make that happen quickly. All right, let's do this. Let's close our eyes again. Let's sink in. Back to what's real. Take a deep breath in. Hold. And as you release this breath now, letting go of everything that has come before since we started our time together today, including everything we just discussed. Because as you open more fully to the experience of the divine within and let go rather than maintaining an attachment or becoming connected in some way, as you let go again and again and again, you open more fully to experience and express and be the totality of all that you are in each and every sacred and holy moment without any limit. As I begin bringing this transmission to a close, I invite you to return the universal plug. I'll do the same for everyone who's on the line live. So grateful for the chance to connect with you in this way. For those that are watching the replay, I'm grateful to you as well. I'll email out the links later on tonight, Colorado time, maybe tomorrow for some. And I can't wait to share this with you again and to continue the conversation into the deep dive workshop on Wednesday, if that resonates with you, if you feel called to participate in that, and to deepen our exploration as a community through additional community calls and other ways of engaging, perhaps like this and perhaps in other ways as well. Until we're together again very soon. Peace. We'll see you back soon. Bye for now.
All right, I'm just wrapping up here.